What destroys more leaders than enemies? Their own emotions. The people closest to you can be the ones who blind you the most. Love makes promises. Fear keeps them. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Machiavelli's words cut to the heart of something we rarely admit. Emotions can be our greatest enemy. They dress themselves in noble clothes, love, loyalty, compassion, even pity, but when allowed to rule, they cloud our judgment and weaken our influence. Think for a moment about anger. In a single moment of rage, empires have fallen, fortunes have been destroyed, and relationships beyond repair have been shattered. Anger blinds reason. It makes us believe that striking back immediately is power, when often true power is in restraint, in silence, in waiting for the right moment to act. Those who cannot master their anger are ruled by it, and if you are ruled by emotion, you cannot rule anything else. Not your destiny, not your future, not even yourself. Now consider love. We worship love as the highest virtue, and it has its beauty. But in leadership, in strategy, in survival, love unchecked becomes a trap. Love makes you forgive when you should punish. Love makes you trust when every sign tells you not to. Love convinces you that someone who betrayed you once will not betray you again. And love makes you believe that loyalty is permanent, when in truth, loyalty shifts with circumstance. A ruler or any individual striving for greatness, who cannot detach from the blinding warmth of love, will eventually be consumed by it. Even compassion, a virtue admired across cultures, has its dangers when it controls you. Compassion, when misplaced, turns to weakness. To always say yes out of pity is to invite exploitation. Those who know your heart bends too easily will not respect you. They will use you. They will take what they need, and when you no longer serve their purpose, they will discard you. And what will you be left with? Not their loyalty, not their gratitude, but regret that you mistook weakness for kindness. Emotion narrows our vision. It makes us see only what we want to see, not what is truly there. A leader blinded by affection may keep a corrupt advisor close. A friend blinded by loyalty may defend someone who slowly poisons their future. A parent blinded by love may shield their child so completely that the child grows incapable of facing the world. Each time, the intention was good, but the outcome was ruin. Machiavelli understood that human nature does not change simply because you feel deeply. People will still act out of their self-interest. They will still betray when it benefits them. They will still shift their loyalties when power changes hands. Your emotions cannot rewrite their nature, but your discipline, your ability to remain cold-blooded when necessary, can protect you from their nature. To see the world clearly, you must first strip away the fog of feeling. Emotion tells you, they would never hurt me. Cold-blooded clarity reminds you, they will if it benefits them. Emotion whispers, I must forgive endlessly. Clarity answers, endless forgiveness is permission for endless betrayal. Emotion insists, if I am kind, they will be kind back. But reality, as Machiavelli teaches, replies, kindness is remembered only when it is backed by strength. The truth is this: people respect consistency more than kindness, they obey authority more than affection, and they follow strength more than love. If your judgment is ruled by emotion, you will be manipulated by those who are colder, clearer, and more disciplined than you. They will see your compassion as weakness, your love as vulnerability, your anger as instability, and in that moment, you are no longer in control. That is why emotions must be mastered, not destroyed, not erased, but placed under command, because a person who commands their emotions commands their future. A person who is enslaved by their emotions will always live under the will of others. Machiavelli's most controversial lesson, and perhaps his most misunderstood, is the balance between love and fear. When he declared that it is safer to be feared than loved, if one cannot be both, many rushed to label him as cruel or heartless. Yet, when studied more carefully, this principle is not an endorsement of tyranny, but a recognition of reality, a reminder that power, leadership, and survival require something deeper than popularity. Love, though powerful, is fragile. Fear, though harsh, is reliable. And the true art, according to Machiavelli, is not to choose one entirely over the other, but to balance them in a way that ensures stability and respect without descending into cruelty. Fear, on the other hand, roots itself in something much harder to shake. Fear is grounded in consequence. When people know that your disapproval carries weight, when they understand that betrayal will not pass unnoticed, when they feel that stepping out of line has real costs, their behavior stabilizes. Fear does not rely on affection, it relies on respect, and more importantly, on the human instinct of self-preservation. A man may fall out of love with you, but he will not easily abandon the caution that fear instills. Fear binds more tightly than love, because it does not depend on changing feelings, but on enduring instinct. Yet here lies the subtlety in Machiavelli's teaching. He did not advise leaders to choose terror, nor did he advocate cruelty for its own sake. Excessive cruelty breeds hatred, and hatred is dangerous. Fear can secure loyalty, but hatred breeds rebellion. A ruler who is excessively harsh, who punishes unjustly, who delights in cruelty, crosses the line where fear transforms into rage and resentment. That ruler is not secure. They are sitting on a powder keg. Therefore, Machiavelli's wisdom was not to discard love, but to temper it with fear, to understand that love without fear is fragile, but fear without love is toxic. Think of a father raising a child. If he rules only with love, always forgiving, never punishing, the child may love him deeply, but grow to disrespect him, to ignore his words, to feel no weight in his discipline. The result is not strength, but weakness. On the other hand, if the father rules only with fear, punishing every mistake harshly, never showing affection, the child may obey, but resentment will build in the shadows. The bond between them will rot into quiet hatred. But the father who balances both, who loves deeply, but disciplines firmly, creates not just obedience, but respect. That is the essence of Machiavelli's lesson. In political life, in leadership, even in personal relationships, the same principle applies. A boss who only wants to be loved by their employees may avoid making hard decisions, may refuse to enforce discipline, and in the end, loses authority. The team may like them, but they will not take them serious. A boss who rules only with fear may keep people in line, but morale will decay, and loyalty will crumble at the first opportunity to escape. But the leader who shows fairness, rewarding effort generously, punishing betrayal firmly, earns both trust and respect. Their people may not always love them, but they will follow them because they feel the weight of both discipline and fairness. Machiavelli forces us to confront a truth many wish to ignore. Love is a luxury. In leadership, fear is a necessity. But the greatest leaders are not tyrants. They are masters of balance. They know when to offer a hand and when to wield the sword. They understand that affection wins hearts, but discipline secures obedience. They do not seek to be loved at all costs, nor do they revel in being feared. They seek to be unshakable, respected, and obeyed, and in doing so, they often win a deeper, steadier form of loyalty, one that is rooted in both admiration and caution. What makes Machiavelli's teaching timeless is its honesty about human nature. People desire freedom, yet they often prefer security. They praise kindness, but they exploit it if it comes without strength. They resent fear, but they obey it more reliably than they obey love. The leader who tries to build their foundation solely on love builds on sand. The one who builds solely on fear builds on fire. The leader who balances both builds on stone. Detachment is often mistaken for coldness, as if to be detached means to strip life of love, tenderness, or connection. But in truth, detachment is not the absence of love, it is the mastery of it. It is the discipline of refusing to let your emotions rule over your judgment, and when applied even to your closest relationships, detachment sharpens your wisdom like a blade that cuts through illusion. The reason is simple. Love has the power to blind, and blindness is the enemy of wisdom. To see clearly, to judge rightly, to act with strength, you must learn how to care without clinging, how to love without losing sight of reality. Think of how easily the heart deceives us. When we are bound to someone with deep affection, we give them a power that can distort our vision. We overlook their flaws, excuse their mistakes, defend their betrayals, and convince ourselves that their actions mean something different than what they plainly reveal. This is not wisdom, it is self-deception. When you are unwilling to detach, you trade truth for comfort. You choose illusion because the reality is too painful to face. But Machiavelli, and every great thinker after him, reminds us that reality does not bend to your feeling. It is mercilessly consistent. To ignore it is to walk willingly into traps. Detachment, then, is the practice of forcing yourself to look at reality exactly as it is, not as you wish it to be. Even with loved ones, this clarity is essential. Consider the parent who cannot detach from their child's image of innocence. Their love blinds them to their child's mistakes, their growing weaknesses, their unhealthy choices. In their desire to protect, they shield the child from consequences, and in doing so, they cripple them. Wisdom would see that allowing hardship, even punishment, even distance, is sometimes the greatest act of love. But wisdom can only arise when the parent is detached enough to place truth above comfort. Without detachment, love turns into indulgence, and indulgence breeds ruin. Or think of the lover who cannot detach from the person they adore. Every sign of betrayal, every signal of fading affection, every red flag is ignored because their heart insists that love will heal everything. They cling tighter, they forgive endlessly, they hope against all evidence. In the end, what remains is not love, but suffering. Detachment, however, would have given them the courage to see clearly that the person they love is not who they imagined, that the relationship is not what it seems, and their worth is not dependent on clinging to someone who diminishes them. By stepping back, by refusing to drown in their feelings, they would have preserved their dignity and their wisdom. Detachment is also a shield against manipulation. When others sense that your love blinds you, they will use. A friend who knows you cannot say no will take advantage of your generosity. A family member who knows you cannot detach from obligation will exploit your guilt. A partner who knows your forgiveness has no end will repeat the same betrayal. They are not always malicious. They are simply human, acting in self-interest, as Machiavelli observed. But the person who practices detachment cannot be so easily manipulated. They can love and still say no. They can give and still draw limits. They can forgive, but only once or twice, not endlessly. Their wisdom flows from their ability to separate what their heart feels from what their mind knows. Machiavelli did not speak often of family or intimacy, but his principle applies universally. Human beings act according to their needs, their interests, and their circumstances. Love does not change this. To assume that love overrides human nature is to set yourself up for disappointment. Detachment allows you to recognize this truth. It gives you the freedom to love fully while still seeing clearly. You do not stop caring, but you stop deceiving yourself. You do not stop giving, but you stop giving endlessly. When it destroys you, you do not stop trusting, but you trust with your eyes open, not closed. Wisdom sharpens in detachment, because it removes the haze of desire. It forces you to evaluate people and situations by their actions, not your hope. It teaches you to distinguish between who someone is and who you want them to be. And it shows you that the deepest form of love is not blind attachment, but clarity. To truly love someone, you must see them as they are, not as you imagine them. To truly protect yourself, you must value truth over comfort. Detachment makes both possible. There is also a deeper layer to this principle. Detachment from loved ones is not only about protecting yourself from their flaws, it is also about protecting them from your own. When you are too attached, your judgment is clouded, not just about who they are, but about who you are to them. You may begin to control, to smother, to demand, to cling in ways that weaken them. A detached love is a disciplined love. It allows freedom, it trusts without illusion, guides without domination, and loves without consuming. This kind of love, rooted in detachment, is stronger, because it does not depend on illusion, it depends on truth. The wisest people in history were those who learned to step back, even from those they cared for most, and view the relationship from a distance. They asked, what is really happening here? What do their actions reveal? What is my role in this dynamic? Am I serving truth, or only serving my feelings? By asking these questions, they avoided the traps that ensnared others. They could act decisively, even painfully, when it was necessary. They could cut ties if the ties became chains. They could stand firm when others expected them to bend. That firmness, born of detachment, was the foundation of their wisdom. In the end, detachment is not about loving less. It is about loving wisely. It is about seeing people as they are, not as you wish them to be. It is about refusing to be blinded, refusing to be manipulated, refusing to surrender your judgment to emotion. Detachment sharpens wisdom, because it forces you to choose truth over illusion, strength over weakness, clarity over blindness. And though it may feel cold at first, in time it reveals itself to be the deepest form of strength. For to be detached is not to stop loving, it is to finally see love in its true form, a choice, not a change. Compassion is one of the most powerful virtues a human being can possess, yet it is also one of the most misunderstood. People often confuse compassion with weakness, as though to be kind is to be defenseless, and to be gentle is to be vulnerable. But there is a vital difference between compassion and vulnerability, a difference that determines whether your kindness will elevate you. Compassion is strength under control, a conscious choice to extend understanding or mercy, even when you have the power not. Vulnerability, on the other hand, is when your kindness is unguarded, unmeasured, and easily exploited. Machiavelli's wisdom reminds us that without discipline, compassion turns into a weapon others can use against you. To navigate life wisely, you must learn to separate the two. Compassion is deliberate. It arises from clarity, not blindness. When you are compassionate, you see another person's suffering, weakness, or need, and you choose to respond with mercy, rather than cruelty. But you are not deceived. You do not close your eyes to their nature, nor do you ignore the possibility of betrayal. Instead, you make a conscious calculation. You know what they are capable of, you know what risks exist, but you still extend kindness, because you can afford to, because it serves a greater purpose, or simply because it is part of your humanity. Compassion is controlled. It is the hand that feeds but does not surrender the sword. It is strength restrained, not strength abandoned. Vulnerability, by contrast, arises from illusion. It is when you mistake your compassion for a shield, when you believe that your kindness will protect you, when you trust that because you are good to others, they will automatically be good to you. Vulnerability is blind faith in human gratitude, and Machiavelli warned us, repeatedly, that gratitude is fleeting. A person who is vulnerable in this way becomes easy prey, because others sense it. They know your mercy has no limits. They know your kindness comes without condition. They know that you will forgive again and again, and so they lose respect for you. What began as a noble desire to show love becomes a dangerous invitation to be used. The crucial difference lies in control. Compassion is an act of power. Vulnerability is the surrender of power. Compassion is when you decide to spare someone, even though you could punish them, when you choose to help someone even though you don't have to. Vulnerability is when you cannot bring yourself to say no, when you let guilt or fear, or attachment dictate your choices. Compassion wins respect, because it shows strength, tempered by mercy. Vulnerability loses respect, because it shows that your kindness is not a choice, but a weakness. Consider a ruler who spares a defeated enemy. If he does it with clear calculation, knowing that sparing this enemy will win him allies, stabilize his rule, or save resources, that is compassion rooted in strategy. It strengthens him. But if he spares the enemy simply because he cannot bear to act decisively, simply because pity overwhelms his judgment, that is vulnerability. It weakens him, and eventually it will cost him everything. The same is true in personal life. A friend who helps you in hardship, but sets limits when you overstep, is compassionate. A friend who helps you endlessly, even when you abuse their kindness, is vulnerable. The former earns your respect, the latter invites your exploitation. Machiavelli understood that people admire compassion, but they follow strength. They may praise you for being endlessly forgiving, endlessly kind, endlessly accommodating, but secretly they do not respect you. They sense the lack of discipline in you, and in human nature, a lack of discipline always invites abuse. Compassion without limits becomes vulnerability, and vulnerability eventually destroys both the giver and the relationship. This is why detachment and clarity are necessary companions to compassion. To give wisely, you must first know when to stop giving. To forgive wisely, you must know when to draw the line. Without those limits, you are not compassionate. You are defenseless. Think also of leaders in history. Those remembered for their greatness were not the ones who were endlessly forgiving, nor those who were endlessly cruel, but those who knew when to balance mercy with discipline. A leader who pardons wisely is admired. A leader who pardons blindly is overthrown. Likewise, in families, a parent who disciplines with compassion raises strong children. A parent who confuses compassion with indulgence raises weak and dependent ones. The pattern repeats everywhere. Compassion strengthens, vulnerability weakens. It is also worth noting that true compassion sometimes requires hardness. To tell a loved one a painful truth, to deny them something they desperately want, to let them face consequences they have earned. These acts feel harsh, but they are acts of real compassion. They serve the long-term growth of the other person, even if they cause short-term pain. Vulnerability, on the other hand, cannot bear to cause pain, even when it is necessary. Vulnerability shelters others from consequences, spares them from truth, indulges their weaknesses, and in doing so, does not love them, but cripples them. The vulnerable person mistakes indulgence for love, when in fact it is often the opposite. The wisdom of Machiavelli reminds us that compassion without discipline is not compassion at all. It is softness, fragility, an open wound waiting to be exploited. True compassion requires strength. It requires the courage to say yes when it is right, and no when it is necessary. It requires the ability to give without being drained, to forgive without being deceived, to love without being blinded. Compassion is powerful because it is rooted in choice, not compulsion. Vulnerability, however, is compulsion disguised as kindness. It is the inability to resist, the inability to protect, the inability to act with clarity. In the end, the difference between compassion and vulnerability comes down to this. Compassion is love, with boundaries. Vulnerability is love without them. Compassion elevates you, wins respect, and creates relationships based on balance and truth. Vulnerability diminishes you, erodes respect, and creates relationships based on exploitation and illusion. To be wise, you must cultivate compassion while refusing vulnerability. You must give without being consumed, forgive without being fooled, and love without losing yourself. This is not cruelty. This is strength in its highest form. The strength to be kind without being weak. The strength to be merciful without being manipulated. The strength to be human without surrendering your power. Cold-blooded clarity is one of the rarest qualities a person can possess, because it requires stripping away the illusions that comfort most people. It is the ability to look at life, relationships, and power without the haze of emotion, without the comforting lies of wishful thinking, and without the weakness of denial. While the world celebrates passion and feeling, those who rise to positions of real influence understand that clarity, especially when it is cold-blooded, is the foundation of strength, the source of respect, and the seed of legacy. It does not mean living without feeling, but it does mean refusing to let feeling guide the decisions that shape your future. Cold-blooded clarity is not cruelty. It is discipline sharpened into wisdom. Strength begins with clarity. Most people are not weak because they lack resources, opportunities, or intelligence. They are weak because they refuse to see reality as it is. They lie to themselves about who they can trust. They convince themselves that their enemies are secretly friends. They tell themselves that those who have betrayed them will surely change. This blindness drains their power, because decisions built on illusions always collapse. But a cold-blooded mind looks at facts, not wishes. It sees people for what they do, not what they promise.